Hello and welcome to Pacific Dialogue. I'm your host, Wen Han. In a time of rising global tensions and shifting power dynamics, how should the world understand China's past and its role in shaping the future? Today we have with us Carlos Garrido. Garrido is an instructor in philosophy at Southern Illinois University. He's an editor in Midwestern Marx Institute for Marxist Theory and Political Analysis, and in the Journal of American Socialist Studies. You wrote a book, I think it's 2 years ago. Yes, it's called The Purity Fetish and the Crisis of Western Marxism. And you mentioned some concepts about China and its the socialism with market. Can you elaborate how you reconcile these concepts together?
The case of China is specifically important because of the new Cold War that the U.S. is waging on China. Whenever I'm trying to convince people about socialism and communism, I have to reference China. I have to reference what China has been able to do since 1949 with its revolution and turn a semi-feudal backwards country into one of the most prosperous countries on earth. So markets and private property have existed not just in capitalism. So it's absurd to say that just because the market plays a specific role under capitalism, that all markets are capitalism. What we find is that the market ends up functioning in accordance with the mode of production it is rooted in. And when you have a capitalist mode of production, it functions in the cannibalistic and parasitical way that we find in the West. But when you have a socialist mode of production, it functions in a different way, in a completely different way. And the ends that it ends up working towards are the general social ends of the socioeconomic system. And that's a basic dialectical framework of the relationship of form to content. China is in a process of development. It's constantly evolving. And at the current conjuncture, having markets and having private property is a central component and functions as an auxiliary of the centrally planned state economy. And it works towards the common good. And insofar as it does that, it's an integral part of the earliest stages of socialist construction.
Yeah, and China also has a concept recently, whole process people's democracy. And since it's a new term, new concept, and I notice you pick up the concept. And how do you understand it? And how do you understand it in comparison with the Western liberal democratic system?
In many ways, what's understood as democracy in the liberal West is a complete perversion of the etymological understanding of democracy. If you go back to what democracy meant in ancient Greece, you have two terms. You have demos, which is not just people. The connotation in ancient Greece was common folk. It's masses, basically. And kratos, which means rule, the ability to exert power over. Democracy had nothing to do with multi-party elections, as they try to reduce it in the so-called liberal democratic West. So the notion of democracy in the liberal democratic West has nothing to do with democracy, because you can have multi-party elections, but still you have the people not feeling like they have any control or power or ability to rule over their lives. And that's what we have at the moment in a society like the US, where you have the formal institutions of what we call in Marxism bourgeois democracy, capitalist democracy, but the essence of democracy, which is rule of the people, is not there. A concept like whole people's process democracy developed here in China is really the essence of what democracy is, because it includes the demos, the common folk, as integral in the process of governance. And if you look at the different scales of public participation and protagonistic activity that the Chinese people can embark on in the Chinese system of socialist democracy, it is much more active than in the US. In the US, democracy is reduced to something you do in a voting booth every 2 to 4 years. Can we really be said to be democratic if democracy is just pressing a button every 2 to 4 years? That's absurd. A democracy that's reduced to just people participating in elections every 4 years, being called upon to vote for one or another party that they had no control in deciding the candidates or the policy or anything like that. So whole process, People's Democracy, it's almost like a modern reiteration of what the original meaning of democracy was, which is getting people involved in a way where they are the protagonists and have control over their lives.